Chapter 834. 10 billion? My current net worth is at least 2 trillion. Yu Qianqiu muttered in his heart for a while. He raised his hand and patted Du Feng's shoulder, then turned around with his hands behind his back. He shook his head and smiled bitterly. Brother Du, I appreciate your kindness, but I really can't help you with this. To tell you the truth, Brother Du, Elder Yufuzi tried to persuade me to join the ranks of the outer disciples of the Skyward Palace. Du Feng was taken aback. He then remembered that Shui Mingqing had experienced the Divine Ruin Realm and had a good relationship with Yu Qianqiu. It was not difficult for Yufuzi to understand that Yufuzi wanted to rope him in. After all, everyone wanted to recruit talents. He frowned and asked, Brother, you agreed? No. Yu Qianqiu turned around and shook his head. I rejected him, which made Elder Yufuzi unhappy. Fortunately, Brother Shui came forward to smooth things over. Otherwise, I'm afraid I won't be able to leave Skyward Palace's shop. Du Feng's eyes were filled with confusion. He slowly asked, Since Brother Yu has already rejected me, why won't he help me? Is it because the money is too little? Money is not a problem. This can be discussed again. It's not about money. Yu Qianqiu smiled indifferently. Although I'm a rogue cultivator, I have a master. How can I join another sect without permission? Besides, when I rejected Elder Yufuzi, I promised him that if I want to become an outer court disciple of another sect, Skyward Palace will be my first choice. Du Feng stood in silence for a long time. After a long time he smiled bitterly. I understand. Elder Yufuzi is really good. Forget it, I won't force Brother Yu. It's not that I'm forced, I'm just powerless. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and smiled. But then again, if Du Feng needs my help, I don't necessarily have to become an outer court disciple of the spirit cultivation sect. If there's anything you need, just let me know. As long as it's within my power, I won't refuse. Du Feng's eyes lit up. Good. Brother Yu's words are enough. I trust Brother Yu. Hehe. Help each other, help each other. After laughing for a while, Yu Qianqiu coughed and said, Brother Du has come at the right time. I have something to ask Brother Du. Please do not hesitate to enlighten me. Go ahead. Du Feng raised his hand without hesitation. Yu Qianqiu immediately said with a serious expression, I talked to Elder Yufuzi about establishing a chamber of commerce before. He sneered at me for overestimating myself and said that establishing a chamber of commerce would cost a lot of money. I wonder what the expenses are. Du Feng looked him up and down in disbelief. Do you want to establish your own chamber of commerce? Please enlighten me. Yu Qianqiu nodded. Du Feng blanked for a moment, then shook his head and sighed. Brother Yu is a man with lofty ambitions. How could he submit to others? What made him depressed was that he wanted to establish a chamber of commerce that could do any kind of business. But where was he going to find 50 billion divine-grade spirit stones? It was true that his net worth was high, but he didn't have that much money. If he were to sell a large batch of immortal herbs now, it would definitely arouse suspicion. How should he solve this problem? Looking at the frowning Yu Qianqiu, Du Feng probed. Brother Yu, are you worried about spirit stones? Yes, this is not a small amount of money, it's very difficult. Yu Qianqiu sighed, shaking his head. All of a sudden his eyes lit up, looking at Du Feng. I wonder if Brother Du has enough money on hand? If you do, can you temporarily lend me 50 billion divine-grade spirit stones? Don't worry. I'll think of a way to return it to you in no time. 50 billion? Du Feng jumped in fright, his face twitched. Brother Yu, are you joking? Where would I find so much money to lend you? If it was a few 100 million, I could still find a way to satisfy you. But 50 billion? This is too exaggerated. Brother Du, you're being a little unreasonable. Yu Qianqiu rubbed his chin, his face filled with doubt. Didn't you say that if I lend you a hand, your father will give me 10 billion divine-grade spirit stones? You even said that money isn't a problem and can be discussed. Don't tell me it's all a lie. Du Feng blinked for a second, then smiled wryly. Why would I lie to you? Brother Yu, you overestimate us father and son. I already said that even if it's 10 billion divine-grade spirit stones, my father will think of a way to raise it slowly. It's impossible for him to take out 10 billion divine-grade spirit stones in a short time. It's true that my father is an elder of the spiritual cultivation sect, and it's also true that the spiritual cultivation sect is rich, but without a good reason. It's impossible to use such a large amount of public property. Not to mention, you want 50 billion divine-grade spirit stones. I'm really powerless. Forget it, don't say anymore. I'll think of another way. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand weakly, walking to the edge of the mountain and sitting down. He closed his eyes and fell into deep thought, his entire being listless. Just like this, the two of them stood there in a deadlock for a long time. Du Feng strolled on the top of the mountain, looking at the surrounding scenery over and over again, until he had engraved all the surrounding terrain into his mind. He felt a little uncomfortable, so he walked behind Yu Qianqiu and coughed. Brother Yu, we can think of a way slowly, there's no rush, let's go back first. Go back. Yu Qianqiu raised his head and looked around, facing the mountain wind. He muttered. Go back where? Where can I go? Is this my home? My home is in a very, very far away place, too far away. Although I've always wanted to go back, I can't even find the way home. How do you want me to go back? I'm like a migratory bird that's searching for its final home. I've been trying my best to fly, but I'm not even as good as a migratory bird. Although I've never stopped and have been trying my best to fly, but there's really no way to go back. There's no way to go back. His slightly hoarse voice was full of desolation, making Du Feng feel a little sorry for him. Du Feng didn't know why he suddenly became so sad. He opened his mouth a few times but stopped himself. In the end, he couldn't help but ask, Brother Yu, why don't I understand what you mean? Where is your home? Yu Qianqiu suddenly came to his senses. The inexplicable sadness hidden in the deepest part of his heart was unintentionally aroused and quickly restrained. His eyes regained their clarity. He turned his head to look at Du Feng behind him and laughed. For a cultivator, everywhere is his home. You should go back first. Damn it. I still have to think of where to get the 50 billion. I have to establish my own chamber of commerce. You should go back first. He sat there and waved his hand to signal Du Feng to go first. Du Feng shook his head speechlessly, cupped his hands and left. After watching Du Feng leave, Yu Qianqiu also stood up and stood at the peak of the mountain with his hands behind his back. His eyes glimmered as he looked at the distant horizon, thinking of a safe way to get the 50 billion. However, not long after, someone shouted from afar. Brother Yu. Yu Qianqiu turned his head and saw a red shadow shooting towards him. Hui Yunlong's voice came, and he landed in front of him. Hui Yunlong laughed. Brother Yu, you really made me look for you. I finally found you. Yu Qianqiu was speechless. Needless to say, it must be Du Feng who leaked his location. No one else knew that he was here. Damn it. You really know how to conduct yourself. First, you took me to a remote place to ask all you wanted. Then when you found out that there was no hope, you went to your cousin's place to be a good person. As Yu Qianqiu expected, after a few words, Hui Yunlong said the same thing as Du Feng. He wanted to make him an outer disciple of the mythical fire palace. Yu Qianqiu had no choice but to politely repeat his rejection of Du Feng to Hui Yunlong, causing Hui Yunlong to be unable to smile. However, Yu Qianqiu still treated Hui Yunlong differently, because he considered that after the group of people from the cultivation world came, they would definitely change the fellows who were fighting to a higher level. Moreover, in the future when he established his chamber of commerce, he would definitely have to deal with them frequently, so it was better to have a good relationship with the number 1 blacksmith sect in the celestial world. Therefore, he repeatedly patted his chest and promised that if there was anything that he needed help with in the future, he would just let him know. If he could do it, he would do it. If he couldn't, he would think of ways to do it. Chapter 835. Huang Xiaolong had really grasped Hui Yunlong's pulse. A straightforward person like Hui Yunlong would never be able to withstand words like, willing to sacrifice oneself for a brother. Hui Yunlong was so moved that he nearly smacked a hole in his chest. He did not say anything else, merely telling Yu Qianqiu that if there was anything he needed help with, he would do it. Even if he couldn't, he would think of a way to help. Yu Qianqiu laughed like an old fox that had just stolen a chicken. He patted Hui Yunlong's shoulder, and nodded repeatedly. Brother Yunlong's words reminded me of something. I wonder if Brother Yunlong can lend me 50 billion divine-grade spirit stones. Don't worry, I'll return it to you in the shortest time possible. Hee. Hui Yunlong's smile stiffened, his eyes nearly popped out of their sockets. He swallowed with difficulty, stuttering as he asked, How much? 50 billion divine-grade spirit stones? You're saying you want to borrow 50 billion divine-grade spirit stones from me? AI. Yu Qianqiu sighed inwardly. From Hui Yunlong's expression, it was obvious that a single sentence from Hui Yunlong had frightened him to the point that he couldn't speak clearly. Hui Yunlong definitely wouldn't be able to take out that much money. Huang Xiaolong laughed awkwardly. It's just a joke. Brother Yunlong need not take it to heart. At his age, Hui Yunlong's expression relaxed, exhaling deeply as he rubbed his forehead. There was still lingering fear in his heart. Brother, you really gave me a fright. I thought, brother, you really wanted to borrow 50 billion divine-grade spirit stones from me. You have to know that even if I were to be sold, I wouldn't be able to get that much money. You really gave me a fright. It's just a joke, don't take it seriously. Yu Qianqiu consoled Hui Yunlong out of goodwill. Subsequently, the two of them chatted about their brotherly love, and when they were done, they returned home. In the next few days, Yu Qianqiu, who was homeless in the immortal world, stayed in the mythical fire palace's shop. Every day, he would try his best to build a good relationship with everyone in the shop. Of course, Hu Lianqing was his main target. Secondly, when he was free, Huang Xiaolong would stroll the streets with Hui Yunlong, asking him about matters related to the immortal world, deepening his understanding of the immortal world. Ever since the first time he went to the Four Links Chamber of Commerce to collect his 100 million divine-grade spirit stones commission, Huang Xiaolong had found an excuse to bring Hui Yunlong to the Four Links Chamber of Commerce's shops. Hui Yunlong was never tired of this, willing to listen to Du Feng's rotten excuses. After that, no one knew what happened, but Du Feng also went to the mythical fire palace's shop every day, using the excuse that he wanted to have fun together to hitch a ride to the Four Links Merchant Guild's shop every day. After some time, the father-daughter pair, Long and Li, understood what Xiaolong was doing. That Yu Qianqiu was just a foil. The two people who were always hinting at Mu Tianjiao were obviously interested in the young lady of the Mu clan. Although Mu Tianjiao accompanied them, talking and laughing, she was neither humble nor respectful, neither too close nor too far, deepening their friendship. Whenever the two of them showed any signs of wanting to do something obvious, she, a smart person, would feign ignorance. Yu Qianqiu, the giant third wheel, was watching the fun from the side. When he first decided to establish the Chamber of Commerce, he had considered whether he should make use of Mu Tianjiao and take over the Four Links Chamber of Commerce. That way, he could save 50 billion divine-grade spirit stones. But he gave up on the idea. If he had to establish his own Chamber of Commerce in the immortal world, then the name wouldn't be the Four Links Chamber of Commerce, but the famous Under the Heavens Trading House. Yin Baikong died in battle in order to defend against the powerful enemies of the immortal world. This was a kind of spirit, and if this spirit was brought to the immortal world, it would become a strong cohesive force, a strong centripetal force. Yu Qianqiu believed that as long as the signboard of the Under the Heavens Trading House was established in the immortal world, it would definitely give those cultivators who left their homes to fight in the immortal world a sense of belonging. They wouldn't be like him, feeling homeless. Secondly, Yin Baikong's Under the Heavens Trading House had left behind a large number of business elites. Once they gathered in the immortal world, it would be the time for them to display their skills in this vast land. At that time, he wouldn't need to worry about anything. He only needed to grasp the direction behind the scenes. Presumably, they would also be very willing to let the Under the Heavens Trading House flourish everywhere in the immortal world, especially Sikong Ju and Jing Yuankong. This was called walking the dignified path of a king, winning over the hearts of the people. One must know that the will of the people couldn't be changed no matter how much money you had. Because of this, Yu Qianqiu decided to fork out this sum of money regardless of the cost. At the very least, he would just treat it as spending money to remember Yin Baikong. He hoped that Yin Baikong was somehow aware of this, hoped that he would smile when he found out that the Under the Heavens trading house he found it had taken root in the immortal world. Thinking about it this way, Yu Qianqiu felt that this sum of money was well spent. Wang Gutong's shop, in the innermost compartment. Although it was simple and crude, it didn't lose its elegance. The room was filled with the faint fragrance of a woman. The graceful Wan Ling's eyes flickered with shrewdness and experience. She raised her hand and dismissed a disciple who had finished reporting the situation. With light steps, she took out a jade archive from the shelf on the side and stroked it in her hand. Her eyes flickered as she pondered quietly. Beside her, Mu Wan, Mu Gu, and Mu Tong exchanged glances. Although they bore the title of elder, in reality, they didn't care about anything within the sect. They were wandering cultivators, and the three Mu brothers that Wan Gutong's sect master, Wan Buosheng, had saved a long time ago. In order to thank Wan Buosheng for saving their lives, the three of them changed their names and followed Wan Buosheng for the rest of their lives, obeying his orders. In name, the three of them were outer sect elders, but in reality, their positions in the entire Wan Gutong were very high. Other than Wan Buosheng, no one else had the authority or dared to order them around. Wan Ling was the only daughter of Wan Buosheng's late eldest son, and was deeply doted on by Wan Buosheng. Plus, she was quite capable, so Wan Buosheng gave her a transcendent status. Wan Gutong's advisor could oversee the matters within the sect, but she had no authority over them. Therefore, this advisor didn't have much power in Wan Gutong, but it wasn't small either. She was probably the only one among all of Wan Buosheng's descendants who could directly meet Wan Buosheng at any time, anywhere. No one in the entire Wan Gutong dared to not give her some face. This time, she had led a group to participate in the realm of the deity gathering on a whim. Because there were many people at the gathering, Wan Buosheng was afraid that something might happen to her. So he brazenly mobilized the three Mu brothers with the highest cultivations in the outer sect to protect her. Ever since Yu Qianqiu bought 100 sets of jade archives and came out safely from the realm of the deity, he had attracted Wan Ling's attention. Thus, she had sent people to secretly monitor Yu Qianqiu. However, other than interacting with Mythical Fire Palace, Spirit Cultivation Sect, and Four Links Chamber of Commerce, Yu Qianqiu did not make any strange movements. Could it be that her suspicions were wrong? Wan Ling placed the jade archives back on the shelf and turned to look at the three Mu brothers, asking slowly, "Don't the three elders feel that this Yu Qianqiu is suspicious? This kid's previous actions were indeed a little suspicious, but..." Mu Wan paused, then shook his head with a bitter smile. "So what if he's suspicious? He has nothing to do with our Wan Gutong. He really isn't worthy of Mrs. attention." In the entire Wan Gutong, the three brothers would only call Wan Ling Miss. That's not the way to put it. Wan Ling shook her head gently. The soft light emitted by the fluorite hanging above her reflected a hazy brilliance on her plump forehead and her straight nose, which made her beautiful and generous look even more tempting to make men want to kiss her. Wan Ling's gaze deepened as she said, "If he had spent more money on other things, I might not have cared. But he just had to buy 100 sets of jade archives to bring into the realm of the deity. This can't help but make others suspicious of his actions. He actually brought so many sets of jade archives into the realm of the deity? Miss, stop thinking about it." Mu Tong waved his hand and said, "If Miss is worried that he will do something detrimental to our Wan Gutong, I will find a suitable opportunity to kill him and end all troubles once and for all. You don't have to worry about anything anymore." Wan Ling immediately rolled her eyes and said, "What if he's just a pawn?" Mu Tong was taken aback, then said unwillingly, "Then I will capture him and interrogate him. I don't believe I won't be able to find out who the mastermind is." "Old third, don't talk nonsense." Mu Wan stopped him, looked at Wan Ling and said hesitantly, "Miss, are you suspecting that he has gained a lot in the realm of the deity?" Wan Ling smiled and said, "It's still the great elder who understands me, whether it's him or the person behind him. If he really has gained a lot in the realm of the deity, I can't find a reason not to get a share. What do you guys think?" The eyes of the three lit up. They all knew that Wan Ling had been strange since she was young. If an ordinary person was targeted by her, She would probably eat them up until not even their bones were left. The three of them were already bored, and it wasn't the first time they had accompanied Wan Ling to do something like this. It was always quite interesting. At this time, there was a faint commotion outside. They looked at each other, and Wan Ling frowned slightly. Looking at the time, the realm of the deity will close in 1 or 2 days. It seems they should all come out. As her voice fell, the four of them flashed out of the small room at the same time, turning into streams of light and flying out of the shop. In the air above the entrance of the realm of the deity, tens of thousands of people had gathered. Pairs of eyes filled with anticipation stared at the white light in the cave. This meant that someone had already entered the passage out of the realm of the deity. When Yu Qianqiu, who was strolling on the street, saw that there was a show to watch, he immediately left Du Feng and Hui Yunlong, who had yet to react, and took up a good spot in the air. By the time Du Feng and Hui Yunlong reacted, streams of light had already blocked the front row of seats that were allowed to stay in the air above the entrance of the realm of the deity. The two of them did not have the qualifications to fight with a group of seniors for a spot, so they could only stand outside the human wall. Yu Qianqiu smiled as he stared at the entrance of the cave. He wanted to see how many people would be able to come back in one piece after such a commotion. After waiting for a while, he saw that the white light in the cave was still swallowing. He couldn't help but look to both sides, only to discover that Du Feng and Hui Yunlong were not by his side. Especially the people standing on both sides of him. They were all coldly sizing him up. He didn't want others to say that he was a dignified man who was trying to climb up a high branch. A big man still wanted to save some face. He could be suspected of anything, but he couldn't be suspected of living off a woman. While showing it to Wan Ling, I also wanted to show everyone that we really knew each other. Look, it really is a Zixuan token. Not bad. It can't be faked. There was an uproar in the surroundings. Everyone had reason to believe that with this kid being able to enter the Divine Ruin realm, he would at most be at the soul formation stage. How could a soul formation stage itinerant cultivator hired by the Four Links Chamber of Commerce have a Zixuan token? This was too strange. The only reason was that it could really have been given to him by Wan Ling. In the end, Wan Ling's words confirmed everyone's guess. Wan Ling's pretty face turned red, and she shouted angrily, "You don't know what's good for you. Give it back to me." She quickly made a move and snatched back the Zixuan token she had given him. Oh, a series of ohs immediately sounded from the surroundings. Everyone seemed to have understood. Wan Ling herself seemed to have reacted as well. She held the Zixuan token and froze in place. The three Mu brothers looked at each other and held back their laughter. This girl had always been someone who didn't suffer losses, but this time, she had met her nemesis. They were still thinking of taking advantage of this kid, but they didn't expect to be beaten up by this kid in a daze. Now they had suffered a big loss. Nemesis. The sounds of astonishment from the surroundings didn't stop. They were all trying to figure out how Yu Qianqiu and Wan Ling got together. Wan Ling quickly sobered up, and her complexion returned to normal in the blink of an eye. She inserted the Zixuan token into the lapel of Yu Qianqiu's chest, and said with a smile, "Put it away. Don't mind me, I was just joking with you. Why are you still looking at me? Don't tell me there's a flower on my face." Yu Qianqiu's head was filled with fog. He mumbled an, "Oh," and grabbed the Zixuan token from the lapel of his chest. Then he obediently turned around. He muttered in his stomach, "A woman's heart is truly unfathomable. Damn it. You're making a fool out of me in front of everyone. Slut, just you wait. One day, I'll get back this face." He didn't know that Wan Ling was staring at the back of his head while gnashing her teeth in hatred. Although she had a faint smile of disapproval on her face, she was secretly biting her lips. The three Mu brothers, who knew Wan Ling very well, immediately felt a chill run down their spines. They cast a pitying glance at Yu Qianqiu. Just think about it. Today's events would definitely spread quickly. Wan Ling's many suitors would definitely come one after another. Based on this brat's cultivation base, which hadn't even reached the immortal realm, he would definitely die a very, very miserable death. Even his dismembered body wouldn't be enough to fill the gaps between Wan Ling's suitors' teeth. The white light at the entrance of the cave suddenly rose sharply, immediately attracting everyone's attention and attracting everyone's attention. A woman whose face was covered in blood, and her clothes were so ragged that half of her fair and tender back was exposed staggered out. Under the command of the golden-robed guard, she panicked and ran all the way to the empty space below. Someone immediately said in a low voice, "It's a female disciple from Rainbow Cloud Sect." Almost at the same time, several women in fluttering cloud clothes flashed in the air and reached out to support the female disciple, who had fled back in a sorry state. As soon as the female disciple saw her fellow sect master, she immediately sat on the ground and wailed, "They're all dead, they're all dead." Her cries were shrill and sharp, making people panic. A cold-faced woman with a pair of sword-like eyebrows frowned and shouted, "What are you crying for? Shameful thing, let's help her back first." Immediately, someone summoned a white robe from the storage bracelet and draped it over the crying woman. Two people worked together to help her back. The sword-like eyebrows woman had fair skin, and her face was thin, as if it had been cut by an axe. She was serious in speech and manner, and her eyes were like cold stars as they swept across the crowd. Then, she flashed back to her original position in the air and continued to watch, as if nothing had happened. Not long after, the entrance of the divine ruin realm spat out a burst of white light, and more than a dozen people flew out. What was hard to believe was that these people actually fought their way out, completely ignoring the murderous gazes of the immortal palace guards, as if their eyes were bloodshot. "It's Wan Gutong and the Hidden Dragon Manners people," someone exclaimed. Wan Ling and the rest were so shocked that their mouths could hardly close. Some of these people were indeed Wan Gutong's people. But how could they be so crazy as to fight in the immortal palace's forbidden area? Wu Xiong stood on the mountain peak with his hands clasped behind his back, looking down indifferently. "Those who don't leave the realm kill." His deep voice covered the entire square, reverberating in everyone's eardrums. He didn't even give anyone a chance to wake up, and brazenly gave the order to kill. At the entrance of the cave, more than a dozen immortal palace guards attacked in unison, and more than a dozen beams of light shot out. More than a dozen miserable screams abruptly stopped, and the dozen people in the chaotic battle instantly exploded into chunks of flesh and blood. The only disciple who reacted quickly came to his senses in time, and quickly escaped the black line drawn by the immortal palace guards not far from the cave entrance, luckily saving his life. The death of the person behind him scared him out of his wits, causing him to fly into the air like a headless fly. Coincidentally or not, Yu Qianqiu, who was swaggering in the middle, was the first to bear the brunt of the attack. Yu Qianqiu cursed inwardly. "Why is this daddy so unlucky? I've visited the godly ruin realm's entrance twice, but 3 times I've met with such bad luck that I can't escape from. Heavens, are you messing with me? This daddy won't come here anymore. So King unlucky." He was about to dodge to the side and watch the commotion behind him, but who knew that the person who rushed over would immediately turn pale with fright when he saw him? Yu Qianqiu. Like he had seen a calamity, he quickly dodged. He saw this daddy inside. Yu Qianqiu was stunned for a moment. Then several figures flashed out, joining hands to restrain that disciple. Judging from their attire, they were Wan Gutong's people. When that disciple in ragged clothes saw that it was his fellow disciple, a look of relief appeared on his bloodied face before his eyes rolled back and he fainted. He was quickly carried away. An uproar broke out in the air. No one knew what had happened inside to force these disciples to such a state. No matter what, there was no need to make a move in the immortal palace's forbidden area, right? This was too inconceivable. What exactly happened inside? Du Kairan, Huo Lianqing, and Yafuzi exchanged a glance. They had long since received the analysis from Du Feng, Huo Lianqing, and Yafuzi. Previously, they still had some doubts, but now they were completely convinced. Their hearts were filled with gratification. Just this commotion alone was enough to counter the mockery and ridicule they had received behind their backs. Everyone suddenly thought of the Wan Gutong disciple's shout of Yu Qianqiu before he fainted. Why was he so afraid of Yu Qianqiu? Yu Qianqiu was just a rogue cultivator temporarily hired by a small 4-links chamber of commerce. What was there to be afraid of? Everyone's gazes fell on Yu Qianqiu's body, Right now it was no longer a matter of whether they were looking at him or not. The layers of imposing aura were like raging waves, causing Yu Qianqiu to feel as if he was walking on thin ice. He clenched his teeth and endured it. He could even feel Wan Ling's piercing gaze behind him, dissecting him like a knife, as if she wanted to see what secrets he was hiding. Yu Qianqiu deeply felt that he shouldn't have come here to watch the commotion, but he knew that Wan Ling wouldn't blame him. Thus he started cursing in his heart again. Bastard! If you fainted, fainted. Why are you shouting this daddy's name? This daddy doesn't even know who you are. Did I offend you? Fortunately, this situation didn't last long, otherwise, Yu Qianqiu would have run away in fear. The divine ruin realm continued to spit out white light, and groups of disciples from various sects who were either in rags, injured, badly mutilated, or had disheveled hair escaped one after another. Each and every one of them was frightened like stray dogs, or perhaps it would be more appropriate to describe them as beggars. Chapter 837. Outside the ruins of God, it was a complete mess. The crowd watching from the sky immediately dashed down, and the originally crowded area became sparse. These were the people who could not help but ask after seeing the disciples of their own sects come out in such a sorry state. This was because such a strange situation had never occurred in the previous meetings of the ruins of God. The disciples who entered this time seemed to have suffered a great calamity. When the crowd looked carefully, they realized that each sect had sent 30 disciples in, but none of the sects had more than 5 people out. The degree of misery could be imagined. The most uneasy people were the people who were still floating in the air. Each of them stared at the entrance of the ruins of God with ashen faces. The white light had already calmed down, and there was only one day left before the ruins of God closed. They did not know if anyone else would come out. Most of the people floating in the air held on to a glimmer of hope, because only a little more than 10,000 people had come out, while hundreds of thousands of disciples from various sects had entered. No matter what, there had to be at least tens of thousands more. But looking at the disciples from various sects who had already come out, they were all half dead and in a sorry state. Each and every one of them was at a loss. Every second of the remaining time was torture. They were all the leaders of the various sections. If they were all wiped out, how could they go back and explain it to the sects? Who would dare to pat their chest and say that they did not have any enemies in the sect? Who could guarantee that the enemy would not take this opportunity to attack? Seeing the miserable scene below, Wu Xiong, who was on the mountain peak, frowned. He had presided over the meetings of the ruins of God for several times, but he had never seen such heavy losses from various sections. He turned his head slightly and said in a low voice, "You personally bring people in to see what's going on?" A golden-robed man behind him immediately accepted the order and landed at the entrance of the ruins of God. With a wave of his hand, 10 people flashed into the spinning white light together. There were endless questions coming from the area below. The disciples of the various sects who were lucky enough to return feebly recounted what had happened inside. Just as Yu Qianqiu had expected, the disciples of the various sects, for the sake of self-preservation, or for the sake of reporting back to the sect, all began to join forces to kill and rob, and the disciples of the weaker sects were eliminated one by one. If there was a battle, there would naturally be sacrifices. For example, if 2 sects joined forces to fight for a treasure, it was inevitable that one of them would suffer a great loss in strength. At the end of the battle, there was a situation where the rare treasures gradually gathered towards a minority of sections. At this time, everyone had valuable rare treasures in their hands. The human heart was unfathomable, and not all of the sects who had preserved their strength could abide by the agreement. Thus, the situation of attacking their allies appeared. The appearance of such a situation was the beginning of a disaster for the surviving disciples of the various sections. Since everyone had precious treasures on them, they were already at odds with each other. If one party took the lead, the second party would follow. In the end, those who did not want to do so were also worried that their allies would do the same. In order to prevent any accidents from happening, and in order to protect themselves, it was not uncommon for them to strike first. The situation immediately spiraled out of control. In the end, The surviving teams were basically the best of the best in the immortal world. Everyone knew that the reason why sects that had reached this level of strength still participated in the Divine Ruin Realm gathering was not only to fight for rare treasures, but also for face. They were striving to surpass their opponents. The most important thing was the sect ranking competition that happened once every 100 years. This kind of major event that belonged to each sect happened not long after the Divine Ruin Realm gathering. The Divine Ruin Realm gathering was also one of the benchmarks for the Immortal Palace's ranking. Of course, the increasing number of rare treasures on the various sects was also one of the reasons why everyone was envious. In order to gain a better future, some people began to fight with their lives on the line. Those who did not want to fight had to fight with their lives on the line to protect themselves. Thus, the crazy killing began once again. What could they do if they did not make a move the moment they met? They could only act first, and by the end, their eyes were already bloodshot. Many people could not bear such torment, and were almost driven crazy. However, no one dared to quit early. After all, not every sect was as lucky as Du Feng and Hui Yunlong. The elder leading the team was their father. Kill. Kill again. Crazy killing. Either you die or I live. Everyone fought crazily. With great difficulty, they endured until the time when the Divine Ruin Realm was about to close. Everyone prepared to leave as quickly as possible. However, there were several sects lying in ambush at the exit, trying to take advantage of them. As a result, a large number of people blocked the exit. In addition, there were people rushing over one after another. As a result, the situation of enemies meeting each other constantly appeared. It was a disgusting cycle. Thus, the most tragic situation appeared at the exit of the Divine Ruin Realm. It was not an exaggeration to say that there were mountains of corpses and rivers of blood. Every one of them had become murderous demons. Some of them had already lost their minds from the killing and killed anyone they saw. There were even many cases where they mistakenly killed their own sect members. The disciples of the various sects chattered endlessly, their sorrowful cries and complaints mixed into a mess. A bloody and incomparably cruel scene of slaughter gradually appeared in front of everyone's eyes. Even the elders leading the various sects, who were experienced and knowledgeable, sucked in a cold breath when they heard this. They felt a chill run down their spines. No one would have thought that the Divine Ruin Realm gathering this time would be so cruel. Du Kairan, Huo Lianqing, and Yafuzi looked at each other in shock. They could not help but rejoice that the disciples of their sects had recognized the situation in time, so they did not end up being completely annihilated. This was especially true for the first two relatives. Their hearts were thumping nonstop, and they were already thanking the heavens in their hearts. If they had not withdrawn in time, it was unknown whether their sons would have been able to return alive. The most precious thing was that these two families were the only sects that had not lost a single person, and had completely preserved their strength. Behind the crowd in the sky, Du Feng, Hui Yunlong, Shui Mingqing, Mu Tianjiao, and the others had all arrived. When they saw this scene, they were all dumbfounded. While they still had lingering fears, the one they admired the most was Yu Qianqiu's foresight. As expected, it was extremely tragic. Mu Tianjiao sighed softly, and her eyes dimmed slightly. On the other hand, Yu Qianqiu sighed as he stared at the desolate scene below and shook his head. He rejoiced that he had escaped in time with the lords of the various countries. Otherwise, it would be strange if they did not suffer heavy losses in such a chaotic battle. He did not realize that such a huge variable had appeared in the gathering of the Divine Ruin Realm this time, and it was more or less directly related to him. It would not be too much to say that he was the main culprit. However, he was, after all, standing in a corner and looking at the overall situation. He did not realize that he was the one standing on the hillside and inadvertently rolling a small snowball down. As for the consequences of the snowball rolling down, and how big it rolled in the end, he had already left. Most of the people in the Divine Ruin Realm were dead, and no one could trace the countless broken clues to him. This was the conclusion of the jinx, Wu Sihai, that no matter where he went, there would be no peace. It would be a miracle if nothing happened. For example, the Eastern Holy Land that had been quiet for more than 100,000 years. Once this guy went, everything was finished. The white light at the entrance of the divine ruin realm swallowed again, and it immediately caused the eyes of the people waiting in the air to emit a light of hope. However, the light of hope was immediately extinguished. The people who came out were the people from the immortal palace, who had entered the divine ruin realm. The person in the lead flashed to the peak of the mountain, and with a solemn expression, he cupped his hands and reported to Wu Xiong. Reporting to Great Commander, there are corpses everywhere at the exit, piled up like a mountain. We have circled around the small area, and there are corpses everywhere. There is not a single living person. I'm afraid that everyone who can come out has already come out. Should we disperse them? Wu Xiong raised his hand slightly, and his gaze swept across the area below. His face was still calm, and he said indifferently, "Let's wait a little longer. Before the divine ruin realm closes, some of them will not give up." Yes. After that person responded, he quietly retreated behind Wu Xiong. The disciples of the various sects who were battered and exhausted in the field below were brought back one after another. The leading elders of the various sects were still floating in the air waiting, especially those who had not seen the disciples of their sects come out. They were still waiting with the hope of getting lucky. However, the final reality was cruel. The divine ruin realm had been open for a month, and the faint sound of thunder could be heard from the cave in the belly of the mountain. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the spinning white light suddenly expanded, then rapidly rotated and shrunk, becoming smaller and smaller, until it turned into a white dot and disappeared. Silence reigned. After a long time, some people breathed out a sigh of relief, and more people were dead set on leaving. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. Even those inner sect disciples who were lucky enough to return did not have the slightest trace of joy on their faces. Their expressions were more solemn. This incident was worth reflecting on. Looking at the final result, among the tens of thousands of sects and chambers of commerce, almost half of them did not return. The 50 million divine grade spirit stones they paid could be said to be a loss of blood and sweat. There was no need for the people from the immortal palace to disperse everyone, as everyone had already returned in silence. Yu Qianqiu sighed and shook his head. Just as he was about to return, who would have thought that when he turned around, he would be stunned to find Wan Ling looking at him with a smile on her face, and the three elders behind her were also staring at him coldly. "Yu Qianqiu, where do you want to go?" Wan Ling said with a smile. "I'm not your man. Why do you care where I go?" Chapter 838. Wan Ling was dragging a man. The people from the various sects who had forgotten about the two of them, because of the incident in the Divine Ruins realm, were all tongue-tied when they witnessed this shocking scene. It seemed like the two of them really had something going on. Mu Tianjiao bit her lip as she watched the two figures disappear in the direction of Wan Gutong's shop. She couldn't help but ask herself in her heart, if I had a background like Wan Gutong, would I be able to fight for it? Her dejected gaze gradually became resolute, as if she had made up her mind about something. What the hell is old geezer Wan Bosheng's granddaughter doing? Wu Xiong murmured from the top of the mountain, similarly confused. After pondering for a long time, he waved his hand at the people behind him. The people from the immortal palace immediately got busy and began to set up a formation to seal the mountain. Not long after, a misty white fog rose from the ground, shrouding the entire stone mountain without a trace. After the various sects returned to their respective shops, those sects with disciples who had returned by luck, although suffered heavy casualties, brought back a lot of things. The dazzling array of rare and precious immortal herbs was enough to lift one's spirits just by looking at them. For example, in Wan Gutong's shop, the disciple casually took out some of the items from his storage bracelet. Immediately, a strange fragrance filled the room, and auspicious lights flashed faintly. Yu Qianqiu's eyes lit up, and he couldn't help but take a few more glances. Standing opposite him was the Wan Gutong disciple, who had luckily survived in the Divine Ruins realm. After washing up, his face was pale, and it was obvious that he had not fully recovered. Wan Ling had been watching the changes in Yu Qianqiu's expression. She found that he seemed to be afraid of her just now, but now that he saw the rare and precious immortal herbs, his eyes immediately lit up. She immediately felt a wave of contempt in her heart, and in her heart, she gave Yu Qianqiu a vulgar evaluation. Tell me what exactly happened, how did you know him? Wanling pointed at Yu Qianqiu and asked the disciple. Yu Qianqiu turned around in a daze. This disciple has seen him, but I don't know him. After the disciple bowed, he immediately described the great feat of Yu Qianqiu killing 2 groups of 30 people in the Heartless Palace, by himself in the ruins of God. When the 3 Mu brothers heard this, they looked at each other in dismay. Even Wanling was re-evaluating Yu Qianqiu. They didn't expect Yu Qianqiu to be able to instantly kill a group of Heartless Palace's disciples. Perhaps only an immortal expert could do such a thing. Even an ordinary immortal expert wouldn't be able to do it. However, when Wanling captured Yu Qianqiu, she took the opportunity to inspect him, and discovered that he was indeed only at the deity transformation final stage. He was only at the deity transformation final stage, yet he was able to insta-kill a group of cultivators of the same cultivation base as him. His abilities were not to be underestimated. I can't tell. You have such ability. Wanling clicked her tongue as she placed her hands on her waist. Yu Qianqiu glanced at her abnormally plump chest and coughed. What's so strange about that? I've roamed the immortal world for many years, and I don't think I can find a match for any cultivator below the immortal stage. Those who know me call me the #1 expert below the immortal stage. Roaming the immortal world for many years? The #1 expert below the immortal stage? Wanling was startled. She slowly turned her head to look at the 3 people behind her and asked doubtfully, when did the immortal world have such a title? Why have I never heard of it? After the 3 Mu brothers pondered for a moment, they also shook their heads slightly, indicating that they had never heard of it before. Yu Qianqiu didn't care if they had heard of it or not. In a situation where he didn't know why he was pulled here, he let them slowly think about it. In any case, he knew in his heart that since so many people had come out of the Divine Ruin realm, it was impossible to hide the fact that he had shown off his skills in the Divine Ruin realm. Therefore, he decided not to hide it. There was nothing to worry about anyway. It wasn't that he wasn't worried at all. The only thing he was worried about was that the people of the Heartless Palace would find trouble with him sooner or later. After all, he didn't have any sect to support him. I'll pack up later. You guys can leave first. Wanling waved at the disciples in the shop. The disciples immediately obeyed and left. Yu Qianqiu looked around and felt that something was wrong. However, his gaze couldn't help but land on a stalk of immortal grass on the shelf. This immortal execution grass was very valuable and was a high-grade immortal grass. The batch that Utopia got was missing this one. Wanling waved her hand and released a ray of light, setting up a soundproof barrier. She said with a smile, "You've already collected a lot of immortal grass in the Divine Ruin realm. Do you still care about this one?" "You can't say that." Ugh. Yu Qianqiu was halfway through his sentence when he turned around and said, "I'm just a helper hired by the 4 Links Chamber of Commerce. The immortal grass that I collect has to be handed over. How can I not care about such a precious immortal grass?" He almost replied to her words. Fortunately, he realized that this woman was trying to get information out of him. In reality, he didn't know anything. However, he was puzzled. Why was this woman testing him like this? After thinking about it for a while, he came to a realization. The 100 sets of jade archives that he had bought must have made her suspicious. However, how could the change in tone escape their notice? The 3 Mu brothers exchanged glances. Wanling sneered and said, "Do you think I'll believe you? I advise you to tell me honestly, so that you won't suffer. You actually want to play hardball with me? Do you really think I'm scared?" Yu Qianqiu's expression turned cold. He said indifferently, "Why don't I understand what you mean by that?" Mu Tong snickered and said, "You still dare to be stubborn. Since you're already here, if you don't tell me the truth, don't even think of leaving this place alive. You've got guts. Are you threatening me?" Yu Qianqiu asked as he stared at him coldly. His calm demeanor made them secretly suspicious, even though they didn't show it on the surface. However, how could they be fooled with just a few words? Wanling smiled tenderly and said, "If you think it's a threat, then so be it. However, this kind of threat is still better than us making a move on you. You better think it through. Don't refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. Yu Qianqiu turned to face the outside of the shop. He looked at the passers-by on the street and said indifferently, "The relationship between me, the spirit cultivation sect, and the mythical fire palace isn't ordinary. If you make a move on me in front of everyone, I'm afraid that those two families won't be so easy to deal with." Before he could finish speaking, he heard a paw sound. The gray curtain that was rolled up on the door fell down, completely isolating the situation inside from the outside. Wanling giggled and said, "Do you think that if we make a move like this, who would be able to see?" Yu Qianqiu expressionlessly turned back to look at her, and said indifferently, "Everyone knows that I came to your Wan Gutong shop. Do you really think that those two families are fools?" Wanling shook her head and laughed lightly. "I don't care what your relationship with them is like. Even if I kill you, in a situation where no one sees it with their own eyes, those two families wouldn't dare to go against us Wan Gutong so openly." Mu Tong cooperated and shook his hands that were hidden in his wide sleeves. It was a naked threat. "Kill me?" Yu Qianqiu sneered coldly. "I'm afraid that even if I lend you 100 guts, you still wouldn't dare to make a move on me." Seeing that he was still bluffing at this point, but was still so calm that it was a little ridiculous, the eyes of the few of them flickered slightly. Wanling's smile didn't falter. "I don't need 100 guts to kill you. If you don't confess now, I'll make you pay. Do you believe it or not?" Yu Qianqiu nodded lightly. "I really want to see how you're going to make me pay. I really want to see if Wan Gutong still wants to live in the immortal world." As he spoke, he took out a golden robe from his storage pouch and slowly put it on in front of the four people. Piously, he put on the robe without a stitch on. The four people's mouths were agape in shock. Mu Tong's trembling hands froze. The confident smile on Wanling's face had long disappeared. She cried out involuntarily, "Gold-threaded robe!" With a quick sweep of their senses, they knew that it was the unique clothing of the immortal palace, the gold-threaded robe. The workmanship of this robe was unique, woven using the unique magic of the immortal palace. The entire robe was made from a single strand of specially made golden thread, without a second strand. The gold-threaded robe wouldn't get dirty, wouldn't get wet in water, and had some defensive properties. Currently, in the immortal world, other than the immortal palace, no one else could replicate it. With one look, they knew it was the real deal. The reason for their shock wasn't the unique workmanship of the robe, or the fact that it had some defensive properties. It was because every set of gold-threaded robe would never be worn by outsiders, because it was the symbol of the immortal palace. Every member of the immortal palace could only have one set. Moreover, they would cast a special immortal spell on the wearer. So if anything happened to the wearer, the immortal palace would know immediately. In the immortal world, if anyone dared to make a move on the members of the immortal palace would deal with them without mercy. They would immediately send out a large number of people to investigate, and would not rest until the truth came to light. The dignity of the immortal palace could not be blasphemed, and if necessary, they would rather kill the wrong person than let the wrong person go. In short, other than severely punishing the culprit, they also had to recover the gold-threaded robe. They wouldn't let it fall into the hands of outsiders, lest someone used it to disrupt the order of the immortal world. Some clues could be seen from how Wu Xiong, the commander of the immortal palace, dealt with the guard of the immortal palace, and even stripped off his gold-threaded robe during the meeting in the Divine Ruin Realm. Unfortunately, Yu Qianqiu happened to have a set of gold-threaded robe, and what was even more embarrassing was that no one from the immortal palace in the world he was in went to recover the gold-threaded robe, so it became his personal item. If it was in the past, Yu Qianqiu didn't know that this tattered robe had such a great value, and it was only after a period of understanding that he realized it was actually like this. He was still thinking about when he could make use of it, but he didn't expect the opportunity to come knocking on his door so soon. What Wanling didn't know was that the owner of the gold-threaded robe was long dead, and the one who wore it was someone else. Even if she killed Yu Qianqiu now, the people of the immortal palace wouldn't know. What Wanling didn't know was that if she didn't put down the curtain, Yu Qianqiu wouldn't dare to wear this set of clothes in public, because that would be asking for trouble. However, what Wan Lingqian shouldn't have done was to let down the curtains and create such an opportunity for Yu Qianqiu to show off. This guy was bold and evil. As long as there was a little chance, there was nothing he didn't dare to do. Chapter 839. Immortal Emperor Jin Tai's tyrannical power had seeped into every corner of the immortal world for countless years. To the people of the immortal world, he was an unsurpassable godlike existence. The dignified immortal palace was like a towering mountain that made the people of the immortal world feel like ants at the foot of the mountain. They could only look up to it, and very few dared to show any disrespect. As for Wan Ling and the others, once they confirmed that Yu Qianqiu was wearing the golden clothing, they were immediately dumbfounded. They didn't think that Yu Qianqiu was a fake, because it was hard for them to believe that someone in the immortal world would dare to pretend to be someone from the immortal palace to swindle people. This was simply challenging the dignity of the godlike immortal emperor. However, Yu Qianqiu's rise in both his previous and current lives mostly relied on seeking wealth amidst danger. As long as there was a tiny chance, he would dare to take the risk and fight for it. To put it bluntly, he was an opportunist, but as an excellent opportunist, his outstanding vision and extraordinary courage were not comparable to ordinary people. This was achieved through failure and blood on the line between life and death. People like him never took being cruel and merciless or swindling seriously, because they were already used to it. Nothing was more important than achieving their own goals. This kind of person would either die a horrible death or be unstoppable. They could always kill their way out of desperate situations and never gave up easily. At this time, Yu Qianqiu didn't think about the immortal emperor and the immortal palace at all. To him, the troubles that might appear in the future were not as important as solving the problems in front of him. Wan Ling's coercion allowed him to find a good way to solve the current problems. You provoked me first, so don't blame me for being impolite. Yu Qianqiu sneered in his heart. His expression was indifferent. After putting on the golden clothing, his entire aura suddenly changed. He began to emit a faintly discernible aura of a superior as he coldly looked at them. Wan Ling and the others came to their senses and looked at Yu Qianqiu with complicated expressions. They were now sure that Yu Qianqiu had been hiding something with the identity of a rogue cultivator. Otherwise, how could a little rogue cultivator have such a superior aura? This kind of imposing manner was cultivated in a certain environment. It was not something that could be faked. With their eyesight, if it was faked, they would be able to see through it at a glance. I won't retaliate. If you want to kill me, then go ahead. Yu Qianqiu's face was expressionless as he slowly spat out each word. I really want to see if your Wan Gutong's people are really that daring. His gaze was fixated on Mu Tong's frozen hands that were dangling out from his sleeves. The three Mu brothers were shocked speechless. The atmosphere in the shop was unusually heavy. Mu Tong's hands unconsciously lowered. Both hands were placed on his waist. The domineering Wan Ling's aura dissipated in an instant. Her arms were no longer crossed as she asked with a complicated look in her eyes. You're from the Immortal Palace? Yu Qianqiu snorted disdainfully. Didn't your Wan Gutong want to rebel? Then make your move. I really want to see how much guts you guys have. He directly emphasized the severity of the problem, slapping a huge hat on Wan Gutong's head. Who else could rebel in the immortal world be rebelling against? Of course it was Immortal Emperor Jin Tai. This hat was too heavy. Forget about them. Even Wan Gutong's Wan Buoxing wouldn't be able to bear it. Although Wan Buoxing was the immortal world's #1 merchant house, he was nothing to Immortal Emperor Jin Tai. If the immortal emperor was unhappy, he could kill Wan Buoxing at any time without batting an eyelid. Wan Gutong's face paled. If word of this got out, it would be disastrous. Once it reached the immortal emperor's ears, if the immortal emperor really took it to heart, it would be a calamity for the entire Wan Gutong. A sect annihilation was only a matter of time. Although the immortal emperor rarely made an appearance to cause trouble for others, that was because he disdained to do so. However, everyone was well aware of Immortal Emperor Jin Tai's fickleness. It was extremely terrifying. Wan Ling's face paled in anger, her body trembled uncontrollably. She had never been wronged like this before. Mu Wan was shocked. This was the first time she had ever lost her temper. He immediately sent a voice transmission to Wan Ling. Miss, you must endure it. We cannot afford to offend the people from the Immortal Palace. Even if you don't think for yourself, you have to think for the entire Wan Gutong family. At the very least, you have to think for your grandfather, who has always doted on you. Compromise for the general interest. Think of a way to send him away. Me? What did I do? Yu Qianqiu's tone was overbearing. Did I say anything wrong? Your Wan Gutong is scheming to harm the Immortal Emperor's trusted aide. If this isn't rebellion, then what is? The Immortal Emperor's trusted aide? Everyone looked at each other, unsure if Huang Xiaolong's words were true or false. But the Immortal Emperor's trusted aide shouldn't be a spirit-severing cultivator, right? Wan Ling sucked in a deep breath, repeatedly warning herself not to act rashly. Forcing a smile, she said, "This is purely a misunderstanding. We didn't know you were from the Immortal Palace. If we have offended you in any way, our Eternal Trade Association is willing to compensate you." He pointed at the immortal herbs on display. "Everything in this shop. As long as you like it, you can take it." Her heart was filled with endless regret. How could she be so unlucky to offend people from the Immortal Palace? But thinking about it, this person was strange to begin with. If she wanted to blame someone, she could only blame herself for not investigating his background. She must remember this lesson in the future. As the Immortal Emperor's trusted aide, how can I accept bribes from others? You're not insulting me. You're insulting the Immortal Emperor. Yu Qianqiu bellowed, slamming another oversized hat onto Wan Ling's head. The few of them gritted their teeth in anger at Yu Qianqiu's arrogant actions. They really wanted to kill Yu Qianqiu to vent their anger. However, most of the people here knew that Yu Qianqiu had come to Wan Gutong's shop. Once the Immortal Palace found out that something had happened to him, the first person to be implicated would undoubtedly be Wan Gutong. Wan Ling sucked in another deep breath, gritting her teeth. "What do you want before you stop? As long as someone dares to plot against the Immortal Palace, I will investigate to the end. The Immortal Palace's dignity is not to be violated." Yu Qianqiu said with a righteous expression. Mu Wan took a step forward, cupping his hands in greeting. "This is indeed a misunderstanding. I hope honored sir will be magnanimous. We have some friendly relations with Great Commander Wu Xiong, the host of the Godly Ruins Realm meeting. How about this? We can invite Great Commander Wu Xiong to be the mediator, to prove our Wan Gutong's innocence." Motherf ****. You want to use a big shot to pressure me? Let's see who's suppressing who. Yu Qianqiu snorted coldly, proudly declaring, "I'm one of the Immortal Emperor's secret agents. All the information I obtain must be directly reported to the Immortal Emperor. He Wu Xiong doesn't know me, and I don't want to know him either. However, I do want to know if a mere great commander like him has the right to interfere in my affairs." A secret agent personally sent by the Immortal Emperor? This news was too shocking for these people. But thinking about it, it wasn't impossible. Perhaps this was one of the Immortal Emperor's methods to strengthen his control over the immortal world. Especially when Yu Qianqiu said that he was one of the Immortal Emperor's secret agents. It clearly showed that the Immortal Emperor didn't only send out one secret agent. There might be many more. And this Yu Qianqiu had always been hiding his identity, but in the end, he was forced out by these people. Everyone was dumbfounded once again. Wan Ling, who had always been brimming with confidence, suddenly felt like the world was spinning around her. Offending a seemingly insignificant nobody, never in her wildest dreams would she have guessed that the person standing behind him was the most terrifying person in the entire immortal world, directly dragging the Immortal Emperor into the picture. Wasn't this a little too exaggerated? These people weren't idiots, they weren't so easily deceived. But the golden woven robe on the other party's body proved that he was indeed someone from the Immortal Palace. Not to mention, even if someone was trying to deceive them, who would have the guts to recklessly drag the Immortal Emperor into the picture? Because doing so would only lead to death. Fear and panic finally appeared on these people's faces. Due to Wan Gutong's coercion, they actually exposed the Immortal Emperor's secret. Once this matter was exposed, Even if they didn't rebel, the immortal emperor wouldn't spare Wan Gutong. This time, they were in deep trouble. Wan Ling's face was filled with panic. Her mind was in a complete mess. The only reason she dared to do anything in the past was because she had an extraordinarily powerful grandfather backing her up. But now the trouble she caused was too big, directly dragging the immortal emperor into the picture. This was not something her grandfather could handle. What should she do? Mu Wan calmed himself down, decisively saluting Huang Xiaolong once again. This time we were wrong, but anything can be discussed. I believe that since Honored Sir is willing to reveal such a secret, we still have a chance to let this matter go. Whatever conditions Honored Sir has, please state them. Everything can be discussed. Yu Qianqiu glanced at Wan Ling, noticing that the older the ginger, the spicier it was. He slowly took a few steps forward, stopping in front of Wan Ling. Under the worried gazes of the three Mu clan brothers, Yu Qianqiu slowly reached out his hand to pinch Wan Ling's delicate chin, lifting her slightly lowered head up. His hand was not honest, unscrupulously caressing her chin, her white neck, and her face. The faces of the three Mu clan brothers instantly darkened. They were originally entrusted by Wan Bosheng to protect Wan Ling. Now that Wan Ling had suffered such a great humiliation, Mu Tong, who had a bad temper, was about to make a move, but Wan Mu grabbed his arm and slowly shook his head with a gloomy expression, signaling him not to be impulsive and to wait and see. However, the uncontrollable strength in his hand caused Wan Tong to feel a dull pain. The corner of Yu Qianqiu's eyes had been paying attention to the movements of the three people. He had taken such a big risk, so he had to put on an act. If he didn't show the arrogance of the immortal palace, he was afraid that it would cause more suspicion in the future. He was also throwing caution to the wind. Wan Ling, who had always been high and mighty, had never suffered such humiliation. Even if it wasn't for herself, she had to endure it for her grandfather. In an instant, two crystal-clear tears directly fell from her eyes. Her long eyelashes fluttered, and her voice trembled as she said, "What do you want?" Chapter 840. I don't want anything, but you have done something wrong, so you have to pay the price. The hand that was holding Wan Ling's chin felt Wan Ling's body tremble slightly. The corner of Yu Qianqiu's mouth hooked up into a faint smile. He wanted to destroy the arrogance that she was born with, to leave a shadow in her heart, so that she would have to respect him when she saw him in the future. Otherwise, this kind of girl who didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth would easily take revenge. And she would be completely afraid. Warm tears flowed down her cheeks and fell on Yu Qianqiu's finger. Yu Qianqiu lifted that finger, letting the tears flow to the tip of his finger, and lightly tapped it on Wan Ling's red lips. Wan Ling's body trembled a little violently. Yu Qianqiu smeared her tears on her red lips, and said with a light smile, "Don't be nervous, I won't do anything rude to you. Just based on your looks, I won't take a liking to you." Women were really strange creatures. Just a moment ago, because she felt humiliated, she shed tears of grievance. And now hearing the other party say that she was ugly, Wan Ling's slightly closed eyes suddenly opened, and she stared at Yu Qianqiu with a gaze that seemed like she wanted to bite someone to death. Yu Qianqiu raised his eyebrows, pinched her nose, and shook it. "Don't be so fierce. I didn't say anything wrong. You really don't look good. At least compared to my woman, you really don't look good." Pa! Wan Ling slapped away Yu Qianqiu's hand that was pinching her nose. That guy didn't know how to be gentle and protective of the fairer sex. And his hand was really heavy, causing her pain. Wan Ling was provoked to the point that she couldn't take it anymore. And she roared, "What do you want?" The three Mu brothers immediately tensed up. They didn't expect that she still couldn't hold it in. And her big missy temper still exploded. The three of them stared at Yu Qianqiu. If they had no choice but to change the outcome, they could only kill Yu Qianqiu and think of a way to salvage the situation afterwards. Yu Qianqiu stared at Wan Ling's red nose that he had pinched, and then looked at her tear-stained face. He unceremoniously stretched out a palm and waved his 5 fingers in front of Wan Ling's eyes, saying, "Fixed price." The 4 people present were stunned. Wan Ling was startled and asked, "What do you mean?" "Nothing much." Yu Qianqiu wagged his 5 fingers nonchalantly. Fixed price, 50 billion divine-grade spirit stones. I'll act as if nothing happened. In any case, he was ready to risk it all. He had already pretended to be an immortal emperor. If something were to happen, he wouldn't have a good ending even if he didn't take the 50 billion. He might as well take the opportunity to solve the problem in front of him. The 4 of them looked at each other in dismay. So he was just trying to extort spirit stones. When Wan Ling regained her senses, she sneered. 50 billion divine-grade spirit stones. You must be joking. Yu Qianqiu placed his hands behind his back, shaking his head. 50 billion divine-grade spirit stones is nothing to the immortal world's #1 trading house. Then again, if you feel that Wan Gudong's safety is not worth 50 billion divine-grade spirit stones, then act as if I didn't say anything. We'll do what we should do. With that said, Wan Ling turned around and walked away. It wasn't easy to find a good solution. How could Mu Wan let him go just like that? What did money count for? To Mu Wan, Wan Buoxing's safety was the most important. Mu Wan's clear voice resounded. Wait. Everything can be discussed. Yu Qianqiu swiftly turned around, pointing a finger at Mu Wan as he said to Wan Ling. Look, this is the proper way to deal with things. I admire it the most. You should learn more from Senior. Ignoring Wan Ling's murderous glare, Huang Xiaolong turned to Mu Wan. In truth, there's nothing to discuss. A fixed price of 50 billion divine-grade spirit stones. Not a single piece less. 50 billion? Mu Wan's voice was solemn. Isn't that a little too much? We don't have that many spirit stones on hand. Grand Elder, ignore him. He's clearly trying to blackmail us. He's clearly trying to frame us. Wan Ling pointed a finger at Yu Qianqiu, gritting her teeth. Don't give him even a single piece of spirit stone. At most we'll just die together, spreading the news of him extorting spirit stones from us. Even the immortal emperor won't spare him. Let's see if he dares to speak of this matter again. The 3 Mu brothers' eyebrows twitched slightly, as if they were tempted by Wan Ling's words and hesitated. Yu Qianqiu chuckled. You want to play ruthless with me? Fine. Then we'll see who's more ruthless. But let me tell you, I'm still the immortal emperor's trusted aide. Maybe I'll be unlucky, maybe I'll be fine, but even if I die, I'll drag your entire Wan Gutong family down with me. After all, you were the ones who bullied me first. Farewell. Forgive me for not accompanying you. With a flick of his sleeves, Huang Xiaolong strode out without looking back. Mu Wan's silhouette flickered, blocking Huang Xiaolong's path, clasping his fists together. Since you're seeking wealth, then there's still room for discussion. Why must you push things to the extreme? Losing both your life and wealth is not something you and I wish to see. I knew it. The barefoot is not afraid of the shoe wearing. While Yu Qianqiu was feeling complacent, Wan Ling's angry voice sounded behind him. Grand Elder, let him go. I don't believe our big trading house can't win against a little dog like him. Look, she's scolding me. There's no room for discussion. Yu Qianqiu turned around, pointing a finger at Wan Ling as he snarled at Mu Wan. Just now, seeing your sincere attitude, I decided to turn a big problem into a small one. Taking 10 billion divine-grade spirit stones would be enough. But she actually called my immortal palace's people dogs. This is intolerable. Wan Ling's 5 fingers dangled from his palm as he yelled. I've already eaten a weight and steeled my heart. 50 billion divine-grade spirit stones. Not a single one less, or else there's no room for discussion. Hearing this, the 3 Mu brothers' expressions stiffened, a hint of reproach in their eyes as they stared at Wan Ling, as if saying, just because of one sentence from you 40 billion divine-grade spirit stones gone. You! Wan Ling's blood rushed to her head, turning her face bright red. She nearly vomited blood from anger. Her body trembled as she pointed a finger at Yu Qianqiu. You. But she couldn't form a complete sentence. She had never been abused like this in her entire life. The elegance she had in the past, the disdain and indifference towards her pursuers, all the noble and aloof temperament had vanished into thin air today. She looked like a shrew who only wanted to bite people. Look at her. What's the meaning of this? Do you still have any sincerity to discuss? If you don't want to talk, Just say it, I won't force you. Yu Qianqiu spat out a mouthful of air, then undressed himself, taking off the golden robe he was wearing and shoving it into his storage pouch. Mu Gu, who had not spoken a word from the beginning until now, suddenly walked to Wan Ling's side, sighing softly. Your grandfather trusts you so much, he didn't tell you to harm him. I gulp. Wan Ling's throat emitted a strange sound, her eyes rolled back. She was so angry that she fainted on the spot. Mu Gu reached out to support her, looking at his two brothers in surprise. Did I say something wrong again? Mu Wan and Mu Tong exchanged a look, speechless. Yu Qianqiu was also stunned. He didn't expect this woman to be so narrow-minded, so careless. He didn't even consider how vicious his words were. He had caressed Wan Ling's face, and she had swallowed her anger for the time being. But of all the things he could have said, he just had to say that she was ugly. Little did he know that there were some women. If you hit or scold them, they could endure it. But if you said she was ugly, they would remember you for the rest of their lives. It was at that moment that Wan Ling lost her cool, retorting in the manner of a flustered and exasperated woman. Subconsciously, she wanted to refute the other party's words to prove that the other party's words about her were wrong. In short, she wanted to prove that the other party's words were not right, so the words about her being ugly were naturally wrong. The logic of a woman was often inconceivable. This kind of situation usually appeared between women. She was already angered to the point of vomiting blood by Yu Qianqiu. And what made it even more difficult for Wan Ling to bear was that even her own people were helping her opponent. Mu Gu's words made things worse, so she directly fainted. What kind of status was this? How noble! Those were all extras, they could not defeat human nature. With this fainting, all of them became fleeting clouds. Yu Qianqiu coughed, breaking the silence. 50 billion. Are you giving it to me or not? Mu Wan's gaze retracted from the fainted Wan Ling, frowning. We can give it to you, but we don't have that many spirit stones here. Yu Qianqiu swept his eyes over the items in the shop, raising his eyebrows. With your Wan Gutong's reputation, it shouldn't be a problem to borrow some from the neighbor next door, right? How can we trust that you won't pester us after taking the spirit stones? Mu Wan asked. Yu Qianqiu pursed his lips at the unconscious Wan Ling and said, just as she said, you can leak the matter of my corruption and bribery when the time comes. But, do you think I'll take that risk after getting the money? That's why I said it. You can rest assured. Good. I promise you. I'll give you 50 billion divine-grade spirit stones. But if we wait for her to wake up, we won't be able to use such a large amount of spirit stones. Mu Wan said. Looking at Wan Ling, Yu Qianqiu immediately rolled his eyes and said, isn't that nonsense? Look at her. Do you think she's someone who would give me money? Don't worry. After she wakes up, we'll slowly persuade her. There shouldn't be any problems. But I'm warning you, if you still pester us after getting the money, I'll make you wish you were dead. Mu Wan warned, a cold light glinting in his eyes. Enough. Enough with the nonsense. After you get the money, come look for me at the mythical flame palace. But don't make me wait too long. I don't have that kind of patience. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand, walking to the door with a satisfied expression. He lifted the curtain and walked out. Mu Wan looked at the swaying curtain, sighing softly. He turned around and nodded. Wake the young miss up. We need to persuade her. Facing the immortal palace, we can't afford to be rash. Mu Gu's 5 claws condensed, and a thin mist like golden gas quickly seeped into Wan Ling's head. Not long after, Wan Ling faintly woke up. Before her eyes had completely opened, she could hear her muttering, I can't give it to him. Chapter 841. After the end of the Divine Ruin Realm gathering, the huge plaza did not show the same prosperity as in the past. There were very few people on the streets between the shops, and the atmosphere in the entire plaza was heavy and oppressive. In the past, after the Divine Ruin Realm was closed, there would be a lot of buying and selling. But now, it seemed like there was no interest. Normally, after the Divine Ruin Realm was closed, the great commander Wu Xiong sent by the Immortal Palace would evaluate the various sections. However, this time, as soon as the Divine Ruin Realm was closed, Wu Xiong brought a large group of people from the Immortal Palace back to the Immortal Palace, almost without stopping. Was Wu Xiong's attitude telling everyone that there was no winner or loser in this Divine Ruin Realm gathering? As a result, many sects that didn't gain anything from this trip tore down their shops and went back home. The sects that had some gains were left speechless. There was even an entire row of shops that were torn down to the point that only 1 or 2 shops were left. There were even more disgusting sects that directly smashed their shops, making the remaining shops look like they were in a garbage dump. With one sect doing such a prank, other sects immediately followed suit. In any case, this broken shop was not worth much. After a day or two, the huge plaza had become a real garbage plaza. Looking at it from the sky, it was a scene of desolation, completely different from before the Divine Ruin Realm opened. Du Feng and the others stood on top of an abandoned shop, looking around at the miserable surroundings, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. From time to time, they could see sects packing up and leaving, and the number of people in the huge plaza was decreasing. Yu Qianqiu looked around and said in surprise, "Didn't they say they would trade for a while? Why are they all leaving?" Great Commander Wu Xiong has left, and the sects still have to rush back to report the details. There is no need to stay. Du Feng sighed. But there are also many sects that have gained a lot. So many things are piled up in their hands. Before Yu Qianqiu could finish, he saw Du Feng wave his hand and say, "This is not a problem at all. Everyone has shops in the various immortal domains. I believe that the psychedelic immortal city will usher in a peak of trading." The current Yu Qianqiu also knew about the hallucinatory immortal city. It was the largest commercial city in the immortal world. It was said that it was extremely prosperous and huge. All the sects and merchant associations in the immortal world had their own businesses there. Yu Qianqiu silently looked at the everlasting trade hall's location. 2 days had already passed, but there was no response from that side. He couldn't help but wonder if he could get his 50 billion. If Wan Gutong went back on his word, Yu Qianqiu wouldn't be able to do anything to them. Snitch to the Immortal Emperor? What a joke! Only the Immortal Emperor knew who he was. Should I exert some pressure on him? Yu Qianqiu was brewing a bellyful of evil ideas, but Du Feng looked at him and said with a light smile, "This time, brother, you showed off his skills in the Divine Ruin Realm. I'm afraid his name will spread throughout the entire immortal world." Yu Qianqiu raised his head and rolled his eyes, exasperated. "You're mocking me. You guys have the support of your sects. Naturally, you don't need to be afraid of the 7 big sections. But sooner or later, they'll find trouble with me. I'm still thinking of how to deal with them." "What are you afraid of? Don't you have a good relationship with Wan Ling?" Du Feng exchanged a glance with Hui Yunlong and snickered. Although Wan Ling, that woman's cultivation isn't very high, she's still a difficult character to deal with in the immortal world. With her backing you, it's the same as having Wan Bushing backing you up. I think even the 7 big sects will have to think twice. Yu Qianqiu snorted disdainfully. Only he was clear about his own matters. 2 days ago, he had angered that woman until she fainted. It would be strange if she could back him up. However, Yu Qianqiu didn't want to expose the matter. He really wanted to borrow the momentum of Wan Ling, holding his hand that day to delay the danger. But he wasn't afraid. He still had something to rely on. No matter who it was, it wouldn't be easy for them to kill him. His trump card wasn't something to be trifled with. As the 3 of them chatted and laughed, several figures landed in front of them. It was Mu Bing, Mu Tianjiao, Nan Tianlong and Tao Zhong. With regards to the 4 Links Chamber of Commerce, Mu Bing had probably realized his own shortcomings and had the intention of handing it over to his daughter. Mu Tianjiao stepped forward and cupped her hands, saying, "I'm indebted to all of you for taking care of me all this time. Mu Tianjiao really can't repay you, so please accept my gratitude." She gave a long bow, her soft waist almost forming a right angle. The 3 of them hurriedly reached out to help her up, indicating that there was no need to be overly polite. Du Feng swept a glance at them. It seemed that a running shop couldn't be completely empty. He couldn't help but ask, "Miss Mu, are you preparing to return to the 4 Links Chamber of Commerce?" Mu Tianjiao nodded with a smile, but there was a hint of worry hidden in her smile. Yu Qianqiu, who was well aware of this, frowned and said, If you go back this time, I'm afraid that Qi Fengsheng of the Eight Links Chamber of Commerce won't let you go. Do you have any countermeasures? Before Mu Tianjiao could reply, Hui Yunlong waved his arm and laughed heartily, saying, "Don't worry about this. That dog didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth last time. He actually dared to get involved in the matter between our two families and the Heartless Palace in front of everyone. My father has already sent an order back, ordering my eldest senior brother to lead a team to the Eight Links Chamber of Commerce. I reckon that by the time you guys get back, the Eight Links Chamber of Commerce will have already been razed to the ground. Don't worry." Yu Qianqiu, on the other hand, was deeply moved. No matter where he went, he couldn't avoid encountering the law of the jungle. Big sects were big sections. If they weren't happy, they would raze their opponents to the ground. The Eight Links Chamber of Commerce was really unlucky this time. Mu Tianjiao and the others were stunned for a moment, but then they all revealed expressions of joy and thanked him. Hui Yunlong straightforwardly waved his hand and said, "No need to thank me, no need to thank me. This time, it was the Eight Links Chamber of Commerce that provoked my father. How could my father let them off so easily? This has nothing to do with me. However, if there's a chance in the future, maybe we'll go to your Four Links Chamber of Commerce as guests. Don't forget about us old friends at that time." Yu Qianqiu tilted his head to look at the two young masters. He probably wouldn't go to the Four Links Chamber of Commerce again, but it wasn't certain for these two. It seemed like the possibility was very high. Mu Tianjiao's gaze inadvertently glanced at Yu Qianqiu. She smiled and cupped her fists, saying, "The three of you are esteemed guests of our Four Links Chamber of Commerce. We couldn't be happier to meet you. How could we not know you? I'm just afraid that you'll find our Four Links Chamber of Commerce too shabby and refuse to honor us with your presence. Since we're friends, there's no need to say such things." Hui Yunlong looked at the other two and said, "Why don't we find some time to go to the Four Links Chamber of Commerce together?" Du Feng smiled and nodded, "Sure," while Yu Qianqiu noncommittally replied with an N. After exchanging some pleasantries, the three of them watched as Mu Tianjiao and the other three boarded the flying shuttle and left. At the same time, there were also people from the other sects leaving one after another. Hui Yunlong frowned as he looked at the absent-minded Yu Qianqiu and asked, "Brother Yu, my father also wants to return to the sect as soon as possible. What do you think? Do you want to follow me back to the mythical fire palace?" Du Feng stared at Yu Qianqiu with a profound gaze. He knew the secret of Yu Qianqiu wanting to establish his own chamber of commerce, but he didn't know what Yu Qianqiu's intention was to delay the departure of the mythical fire palace. For this reason, he also asked his father to delay the departure of the spiritual cultivation sect, because he wanted to see what Yu Qianqiu wanted to do. Could it be that he really had a way to raise the 50 billion that he wanted? Yu Qianqiu, who was deep in thought, looked at the various sects that were flying away and slowly said, "You guys go back first. I still have some things to do. Don't tear down the mythical fire palace's shop. Leave it for me to stay temporarily." The two of them looked at each other speechlessly. It seemed that he was prepared to stay here for a period of time. Hui Yunlong asked suspiciously, "Brother Yu, is there something you need? Why don't you tell us? Maybe we can help you." Yu Qianqiu unceremoniously rolled his eyes. He thought to himself, "I've already said that I want to borrow 50 billion from you. But can you help me?" Du Feng saw some clues and pulled Hui Yunlong with a bitter smile. "Let's listen to him. Let's go first." But Hui Yunlong wanted to say something, but was forcefully pulled away by Du Feng. Yu Qianqiu stood alone on the rooftop with his hands behind his back. He stood there silently for a long time, until he saw a streak of light approaching from afar. A few people disembarked from a flying shuttle, and it seemed like they were heading towards Wang Gutong's shop. Yu Qianqiu couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. Everyone was leaving this place. Why were there still people coming? Could it be Wang Gutong's people had brought money? Thinking of this, Yu Qianqiu's eyes brightened. Without any hesitation, he flew towards the mythical fire palace's shop. By the time he arrived, the people from the mythical fire palace had all left. However, the shop was still neat and tidy, as though it had been specially cleaned. Yu Qianqiu smiled bitterly as he shook his head. Hui Yunlong, that fellow was too considerate. The people from Wan Gutong's shop had not left yet. In a small room inside, Wan Ling was alone for 2 days. She curled up on a chair, thinking back to the past with a dazed expression on her face. Ever since she was young, there had always been a large mirror in her heart. Ever since she was young, she had been examining herself in front of this mirror, watching as she grew day by day. The beautiful self in the mirror was at first noble, then elegant, then calm and unruffled, then shrewd and capable. A beautiful and perfect woman gradually appeared in the mirror. This was also the image of herself in Wan Ling's heart. She was often complacent in her heart. That was why she disdained those vulgar men, because she felt that none of them were worthy of her. However, that Yu Qianqiu, who had the backing of the immortal palace, was like a stinking hoodlum, smashing the mirror in her heart into pieces with a single kick. From the broken mirror on the floor, she saw all kinds of distorted images of herself. How could she have such a side to her? Wan Ling was horrified. She refused to recall the scene where Yu Qianqiu lifted her chin, refused to recall the teasing of her red lips, refused to recall the scene where he pinched her nose, refused to recall the scene where she screamed like a shrew, refused to recall the scene where she fainted from anger. Wan Ling suddenly discovered that her nobility, elegance, and calmness were actually so fragile. She was like a layer of paper that was easily torn apart by Yu Qianqiu, thrown to the ground, and trampled on until it was worthless. Chapter 842. Outside the small room, the 3 Mu brothers stood there silently for a long time. They tried to persuade Wan Ling for a long time, but Wan Ling still refused to give up the money, protesting with a stubborn silence. It was impossible for the 3 brothers to take out the money from Wan Ling's storage bracelet. Even if they did, it wouldn't be enough. Left with no other choice, the 3 of them contacted Wan Buosheng, recounting everything that had happened. Wan Buosheng was enraged, cursing the immortal palace for going too far, cutting off all contact with the 3 of them. The 3 brothers were helpless. Since Wan Buosheng had the same intention, what else could they say? However, after a period of time, Wan Buosheng took the initiative to contact the 3 of them again, saying, "I've already asked Old 5 to bring the spirit stones." With just one sentence, the contact was cut off again. Clearly, Wan Buosheng had given in after his anger. Although Wan Gutong was strong, compared to the colossus of the immortal palace, it was not worth a mention. Especially that immortal Emperor Jin Tai, who had terrorized the immortal world for countless years. He was not someone that could be defeated by mere brute force. This terrifying existence was too powerful. No one in the immortal world could be his opponent. Jin Tai's coldness towards the immortal world's people was akin to looking at a bunch of ants. Even the slightest bit of displeasure could cause Wan Gutong to be annihilated. 50 billion divine-grade spirit stones was not a big loss to Wan Gutong. But it was a humiliation that could not be erased. Wan Buosheng was filled with hatred, but he was helpless. He could only let out a long sigh in the myriad saints' palace. 3 figures descended at the entrance of Wan Gutong's shop. A gloomy-faced fat man walked in with 2 young men. The 3 Mu brothers looked at the 2 young men in surprise, feeling a little strange. The fat man in the lead was Wan Buosheng's youngest son Wan Lihong. The blue-robed man on his left was the Heartless Palace's High Deacon's grandson, Song Lianqing, and the white-robed man on his right was the Carefree Palace's sect leader's grandson Chai Junlang. Both of them had late-stage minor immortal cultivation, similar to Wan Ling. At the same time, they were also Wan Ling's hardcore pursuers. What the 3 Mu brothers could not figure out was why Wan Lihong would bring these 2 people over. The moment Wan Lihong saw the 3 Mu brothers, he immediately cupped his fists and said, "Greetings, uncles." Song Lianqing and Chai Junlang also greeted, "Greetings, seniors." The Mu brothers grunted softly. Wan Lihong also saw the doubt in the trio's eyes. She immediately sent a voice transmission. "These 2 brats have been staying on Myriad Saint Mountain. This matter is of great importance. Father is afraid that there will be trouble after paying the money." Thus, He asked me to use Ling Er's name to lure the two of them here. If there was still trouble after paying them, I might as well use the two of them to implicate the Heartless Palace and the Xiaoyao Palace. Once the Immortal Palace attacks, the three forces will be able to hold them off for a while. At least Wang Gutong won't be able to hold them off alone. The three Mu brothers looked at each other, then looked at the two pursuers of Wan Ling with deep meaning in their eyes. Mu Wan tilted his head towards the small room and said, "Mrs. Inside, let's go in and persuade her." Wan Lihong nodded and followed the three into the small room. Song Lianqing and Chai Junlang looked at each other with hostility. Then they excitedly followed behind them. When they reached the small room's entrance, Wan Lihong suddenly turned around and shouted, "What do you two want? This is a lady's room. It's not a place for outsiders to enter. Scram back to the Heartless Palace and the Xiaoyao Palace. We don't welcome you here." How could these words sway the two of them? The elegant Chai Junlang closed the white jade fan in his hand and smiled apologetically. "Don't worry, Fifth Uncle Wan, I won't go in." Wan Lihong shouted angrily, "Scram! Who is your fifth Uncle Wan?" The two of them quickly bowed and retreated to a position near the shop's entrance. They could be scolded, but they wouldn't leave. Wan Lihong snorted coldly and entered the small room. Wan Ling, who was curled up in a chair, was initially disdainful when she heard Song Lianqing and Chai Junlang's voices. But her eyes lit up, and she suddenly stood up from the chair. When she saw Wan Lihong come in, she immediately bowed and greeted, "Fifth Uncle." The Mu brothers stared blankly as they discovered that the dispirited and listless Wan Ling had suddenly become so spirited. Wan Lihong casually shot out a ray of light and set up a soundproof barrier. He stared at Wan Ling and shouted in a deep voice, "What do you want this time? You've caused trouble to the Immortal Palace, and even offended the Immortal Emperor. Is that someone you can offend? Are you trying to get your grandfather killed?" Ling, or no, she's wrong. But who would have thought that this ordinary-looking guy was actually from the Immortal Palace, and was even a secret agent sent by the Immortal Emperor? Wan Ling pretended to be wronged as she bowed. Then, she revealed a smile and quickly hugged Wan Lihong's arm and said coquettishly, "I know Fifth Uncle loves Ling Er the most. Please spare Ling Er this time." The Mu brothers shook their heads with a wry smile on their faces. Wan Lihong rubbed his forehead, shaking off Wan Ling's entanglement. He took off the two storage bracelets on his wrist and lamented, "Don't you know how big the trouble you've caused is? Losing 50 billion divine-grade spirit stones is a small matter, but if you provoke the Immortal Emperor's wrath, that would be a fatal matter." "Oh, you're still laughing, is it that funny? Fifth Uncle, it's only been a few days since we last met, but you seem to have put on some weight," Wan Ling said in a serious tone. "Ah, really? Are you for real? Are you sure you didn't see wrong?" Wan Lihong rubbed his face nervously, but when he caught a glimpse of the hidden mirth in Wan Ling's eyes, he immediately understood that he was fooled. He roared at the top of his lungs, "Look at the situation. You still have the mood to joke around?" Wan Ling shrunk her neck, but her hands held Wan Lihong's hands, taking the two storage bracelets from his hands. She bowed apologetically. "Third Uncle, don't worry, Ling Er already has a foolproof plan. Not only can it protect the 50 billion divine-grade spirit stones, it can also resolve the possible danger." The four men looked at each other, not knowing what she was up to this time. Wan Lihong's thick, fleshy face was filled with worry. His eyebrows, which were naturally drooping, curved even more. With a bitter face he said worriedly, "Ling Er, you've already gone too far this time. Don't mess around again. Fifth Uncle, I know you're proud and arrogant, but this is not a small matter. That's Immortal Emperor Jin Taiya. Our Wan Gutong cannot afford to offend him. If you continue to play, the whole family will be finished. You should take pity on this old bachelor fifth uncle of yours." Wan Ling lowered her head slightly. The two storage bracelets in her hands were clenched so tightly that her knuckles turned white. She bit her lower lip. A venomous light flashed in her eyes as she slowly said, "I will give him all the spirit stones, and our Wan Gutong will not touch a single hair on his head. But if someone else kills him, it has nothing to do with our Wan Gutong." The four men were stunned, subconsciously glancing at the room next door. They could roughly guess what she was planning to do. Wan Lihong asked suspiciously, You want to lure those two fellows to make a move against that Yu Qianqiu? I'm afraid that's not appropriate. Wan Ling's crafty eyes looked at the four men, her voice brimming with confidence. There's nothing inappropriate about it. Killing Yu Qianqiu must be voluntary. There's nothing wrong with that. And I won't make any hints. But once they kill Yu Qianqiu, fifth uncle you cover. Ah, you can't. People can easily recognize your figure. First elder can disguise himself and snatch the two storage bracelets back. With first elder's cultivation, snatching the two storage bracelets from their hands shouldn't be a difficult matter. Once Yu Qianqiu is dead, he won't be a threat to us anymore. At that time, the ones killing the people from the Immortal Palace will be the Heartless Palace and Carefree Palace. The Immortal Palace will look for them. It has nothing to do with us. The four men looked at each other, feeling that this wasn't very reliable. This was a plot against the people from the Immortal Palace. Not to mention, it was someone directly connected to the Immortal Emperor. There couldn't be any accidents. Wan Lihong said with some fear. Can they do it? I think those two guys are clumsy. What if they can't kill Yu Qianqiu? It shouldn't be a big problem. I've checked Yu Qianqiu's cultivation. He's only at the late stage of the transforming spirit realm. If those two minor immortals can't kill a late-stage transforming spirit realm cultivator, they might as well just kill themselves. They won't have to come out and embarrass themselves anymore. Wan Ling sneered, then said calmly. So what if they can't kill him? The ones who did it were the Heartless Palace and Carefree Palace. Even if we find out that they did it out of jealousy, we didn't order them to do it. If the Immortal Palace wants to implicate them, then the Immortal Emperor should be prepared to kill everyone in the immortal world. In short, we are fine. The ones who will be in trouble are the Heartless Palace and Carefree Palace. I've long disliked the number one sect in the immortal world, the Heartless Palace. They're a bit too arrogant. I might as well use the Immortal Palace to get rid of them. After hearing this, the four of them felt a chill down their spines. They didn't know what this girl was thinking all day long. She could even think of such a sinister scheme. The curtain of the small room was lifted. The Mu brothers and Wan Lihong came out and began to instruct the disciples in the shop to tidy up the things on the shelves. Song Lianqing and Chai Junlang were worried about the fierce Wan Lihong, so they looked behind the curtain. It was true that the two of them liked Wan Ling, but they were also people who often rolled around with women. After so many years in the immortal world, they had been with countless women. They wouldn't go so far as to sacrifice their lives for Wan Ling's beauty. However, as long as they could get Wan Ling, there was no doubt that they would have an endless supply of spirit stones. With Wan Ling's position in Wan Buoxing's heart, she was completely equivalent to a huge prophet. Who knew how many sects were secretly planning this? Song Lianqing and Chai Junlang could be said to have received a death order to pursue Wan Ling. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been so shamelessly pestered. After waiting for a while, Wan Ling finally lifted the curtain and walked out. She had changed into a pink floor-length dress, which effectively restrained her impressive figure. The eyes of Song Lianqing and Chai Junlang, who had a lot of resentment in their hearts, immediately lit up, and the little bit of unhappiness in their hearts immediately disappeared. The two of them had a flattering expression on their faces as they shouted in unison, Wan Ling! Wan Ling walked gracefully, displaying the noble temperament that she had cultivated for a long time, like a fairy walking on the waves. She walked past the two of them without any hesitation, not even looking at them in the eye. The hem of her dress fluttered, giving off a delicate fragrance, and she directly flew out of the shop. Chapter 843. Song Lianqing and Chai Junlang looked at each other, then rushed to catch up. Wan Ling's flying speed was not fast, and her pink dress swayed in the air, instantly attracting attention. One on the left and one on the right, the two of them chased after her. Before they could say anything, Wan Ling frowned and landed on the roof of an abandoned building. She stared at the two and shouted, "Why are you two following me?" Chai Junlang answered first. "I heard that you were busy here, so I came to see if you needed any help." Song Lianqing nodded and said, "Me too. Wan Ling raised her chin slightly arrogantly and said coldly, I don't need your help. And I don't need your help either. Don't follow me anymore. Or don't blame me for being rude. The two's flattery was immediately stuck in their throats. They looked at each other, and a trace of anger flashed across their eyes. They had the same thought in their minds at the same time. Stinking bitch, don't be so arrogant. When I get my hands on you, you'll see. Song Lianqing's gaze inadvertently swept past Wan Ling's ample bosom, and he looked around with a face full of smiles. Wan Ling, where are you going in this barren mountain? Do I need to report to you where I'm going? After Wan Ling threw out that sentence, she quickly flew away at a much faster speed than before, as if she wanted to shake off the two. Stinking bitch. Song Lianqing looked at Wan Ling's graceful figure and scolded in a low voice. Chai Junlang chuckled and said, I don't care if she stinks. This woman still has some good stuff on her body. If you're too bored to stink, let me. Their voices stopped abruptly, and the two realized that Wan Ling had not flown far away, but had landed somewhere in front of the plaza. The two looked at each other, then quickly flew into the air, and watched as Wan Ling's swaying figure entered a shop. Yu Qianqiu, who was sitting calmly in the empty shop, was patiently waiting with his eyes closed. Light footsteps came from outside, and when he opened his eyes he was startled. He saw that Wan Ling, who had fainted due to her anger, was no longer the same as before. Instead, she had changed into a delightful pink dress, revealing a pair of good breasts that could move a man's heart. It seemed that she had specially dressed up. Yu Qianqiu slowly stood up, his eyes slightly narrowed, and he raised his guard. He was worried that Wan Ling was here for revenge. Wan Ling leisurely walked toward him. She only stopped when she was only one person away from him. She bit her lips and stared at Yu Qianqiu with a complicated gaze. This caused Yu Qianqiu to become even more cautious. As a result, the two of them silently stared at each other for a long time. One of them had ulterior motives, while the other was cautious. Song Lianqing and Chai Junlang, who were in the air, subconsciously lowered their altitude to listen. What puzzled them was that there was no sound from the shop that Wan Ling had entered. Seeing that they had already descended to the rooftop of a row of shops, the two looked at each other and decided to directly land on the street and looked into the shop opposite them. They saw Wan Ling's graceful figure standing silently, and it was obvious that it was a man who was half a head taller than Wan Ling, and they couldn't see the man's full face. The man and woman just stood there silently, staring at each other. This situation made Song Lianqing and Chai Junlang a little speechless. No wonder this woman didn't like anyone and didn't allow them to follow her. It seemed like she already had someone in her heart and was secretly dating her lover. The two looked at each other and saw the faint anger in each other's eyes. This woman had a man, but didn't say anything, causing all the men in the immortal world to flock to her like ducks. She was clearly playing with them. Yu Qianqiu's vigilant gaze moved slightly, and he noticed that two people had landed on the street outside. His head moved slightly to the right, and avoided Wan Ling's obstructed vision, and saw the two people on the street outside clearly. Song Lianqing, who was dressed in blue, caused his pupils to shrink slightly. He immediately recognized that the other person was wearing the uniform of Heartless Palace, but he didn't recognize the other person. F***ck. This woman actually brought help. Anger appeared on Yu Qianqiu's face, and the purple fire element stored in his body began to stir. Wan Ling, who had been biting her lips, saw the reflection of Song Lianqing and Chai Junlang in Yu Qianqiu's eyes. Her eyes flickered slightly, and instantly, her beautiful eyes became watery. She let go of her red lips and said with a slightly sobbing tone, I brought the money. Yu Qianqiu was stunned, and his gaze returned to Wan Ling's face. After seeing the tears in her eyes, he was momentarily at a loss. He didn't know why she was crying, but it seemed that women were women after all, and couldn't take being bullied. He couldn't help but cough, and said, It's good that you brought it, give it to me. He very consciously stretched out his hand. Wan Ling's eyes were filled with hot tears, and she pulled the two storage bracelets from her wrist. Her shoulders trembled, and she sobbed and said, Can you guarantee that after you take the spirit stones, you won't pester me anymore? F***ck. Why do you make it sound like I'm a gangster who lives off a woman? Yu Qianqiu blinked for a second, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Don't worry. As long as I get the right amount of spirit stones, we won't have anything to do with each other anymore. As long as you don't find trouble with me, I won't find trouble with you either. Outside, Song Lianqing and Chai Junlang exchanged a look. The conversation between the two inside couldn't be more obvious. It seemed like Wan Ling had run into a love swindler and was being blackmailed by that swindler. Song Lianqing and Chai Junlang originally wanted to be the hero and save the damsel in distress, but remembering that the swindler dared to deceive Wan Buoxing's granddaughter, they were afraid that this swindler was not a simple person. Hence, they decided to wait and see. I hope you remember what you said today. Otherwise, I won't let you off even if I become a ghost. Wan Ling wiped the tears off her face with a wave of her sleeve and slapped the 2 storage bracelets on her wrist onto Yu Qianqiu's outstretched palm. Choking with sobs, she said, "Remember, don't pester me anymore." Yu Qianqiu was rendered speechless. He quickly sent his divine sense into the 2 storage bracelets. 50 billion divine-grade spirit stones was not a small amount, and it took him quite a bit of effort. After counting, he found that 50 billion divine-grade spirit stones, not one piece more, not one piece less, just right. With the spirit stones in his hands, a huge rock in his heart fell to the ground. Immediately, a smile spread across his face as he patted his chest and guaranteed, "From now on, you go your own way, and I'll go mine. The disputes between us are written off. I hope you can do as you say, otherwise I won't let you off." Inside the shop, Wan Ling threw out those harsh words, then turned around and dashed out while wiping her tears. Ignoring the dumbfounded Song Lianqing and Chai Junlang, she sped away. Women are women. If you can't afford to play, then don't play. What's the point of crying and crying? It's as if I'm a gangster. Yu Qianqiu shook his head, sighing with emotion. He didn't expect his desperate gamble to actually succeed. 50 billion He got it just like that. His gaze shifted to the 2 people staring at him from outside, and the complacent smile on his face immediately disappeared. He discovered that he couldn't see through their cultivation. Without a doubt, these 2 were immortal realm masters, especially those from the Heartless Palace. Yu Qianqiu's steps were steady as he made his way out of the shop. Now that he had gotten the money to register his business, this was not a good place to stay. Song Lianqing and Chai Junlang also couldn't see through Yu Qianqiu's cultivation, thus they dared not act rashly. When Yu Qianqiu reached the shop's entrance and was about to leave, Song Lianqing glanced at the mythical fire palace insignia on the shop, cupped his hands and smiled. "I'm Heartless Palace's disciple, Song Lianqing. Are you from the mythical fire palace?" Yu Qianqiu glanced at him indifferently, and just as he was about to leave with a few perfunctory words, he saw a slightly hunchbacked gray-robed old man walking along the desolate and messy street. After hearing Song Lianqing's words, he subconsciously stopped and looked left and right. Suddenly he chuckled. "Why does this sound so funny?" He's Yu Qianqiu, a late-stage soul formation cultivator hired by the small Four Links Chamber of Commerce. He killed all the people from your Heartless Palace in the ruins of God. How did he become a disciple of the mythical fire palace? Sigh. The disciples of Heartless Palace are really getting worse with each generation. The hunchbacked old man shook his head and sighed with emotion as he walked away. The street suddenly became quiet, and an evil wind blew from somewhere, bringing a chill to the entire street. Damn it! Where did this meddlesome old bastard come from? Yu Qianqiu looked at the receding figure and really wanted to go over and kick him. Song Lianqing's pupils suddenly shrank as he stared at Yu Qianqiu and said indifferently, "You're that Yu Qianqiu?" Although he and Chai Junlang had been staying near Myriad Saint Mountain for a long time, they were not cut off from the news. They had already heard the news that all the disciples of Heartless Palace had been annihilated in the ruins of God. It was said that all of them had died in the hands of a late-stage soul formation cultivator called Yu Qianqiu. He also heard that Wan Ling was holding hands with Yu Qianqiu in front of everyone. From this, he thought of the scene of Wan Ling crying and leaving. Needless to say, this guy was definitely that Yu Qianqiu who was holding hands with Wan Ling in front of everyone. Otherwise, Wan Ling would definitely not show such a weak side. Yu Qianqiu had suspected that these two were helpers that Wan Ling had found. Now that he heard the other party's words, it was definitely not the case. Otherwise, it was impossible for them to not recognize him. And there was no need for them to do this. Yu Qianqiu is me, Yu Qianqiu said indifferently. Is there a problem? Chai Junlang gently opened the white jade folding fan in his hand and looked at Yu Qianqiu. He shook his head and sighed. I thought Yu Qianqiu was some amazing person. It's you. Sigh. I don't know what kind of drug Wan Ling ate. She actually fell into the hands of such a liar. It's really ridiculous. Song Lianqing revealed a sinister smile and said, You're really audacious, to actually deceive Wan Buoxing's granddaughter. Tell me honestly, how did you force her to submit? If there's a word of falsehood, I'll make you wish you were dead. Chai Junlang's eyes also lit up when he heard that. If he could get hold of the handle that forced Wan Ling to submit, then it would indeed be twice the result with half the effort. The two of you want to make a move on me here? Yu Qianqiu looked around and said expressionlessly. If I remember correctly, Great Commander Wu Xiong has long stipulated that no one is allowed to make a move on this plaza at the entrance of the Divine Ruin Realm. Although the Divine Ruin Realm gathering is already over, I don't think the two of you have the guts to try it. Chapter 844. As soon as he said that, the two's faces froze, and they couldn't help but look around. This place was already showing a bleak decline, and it would continue to be bleak until the Divine Ruin Realm opened again in the next 100 years. But even so, since Wu Xiong had already spoken, fighting was not allowed in this square outside the Divine Ruin Realm. Otherwise, it would be a challenge to Wu Xiong's authority. Although Wu Xiong had already left, and no one knew if he would remember this matter. If someone spread this matter to Wu Xiong's ears, who knew what he would think? Song Lianqing and Chai Junlang naturally knew how powerful the Immortal Palace was. With their little guts, they didn't dare to challenge Wu Xiong's words, so they looked at each other blankly. There were fewer and fewer people leaving in the sky. Yu Qianqiu looked up, then waved at the two with a mocking expression. I'm leaving first, no need to send me off. Stop. Song Lianqing shouted. The twisted expression on his face showed that he was enraged by the other party's words. He chuckled coldly and said, I advise you to honestly tell me how you forced Wan Ling to submit. Otherwise, unless you don't leave this place for the rest of your life, once you step out of this square, you know what will happen to you. Know what? Yu Qianqiu turned to look at the two and said expressionlessly, May I ask what your cultivation is like? Chai Junlang was taken aback for a moment. Then, he waved his folding fan and clicked his tongue. Our cultivation bases are indeed not high. We're only at the late stage of minor immortal realm. However, you don't think it will be difficult for one of us to deal with you, a late-stage divine transformation bastard, right? Haha. The two couldn't help but laugh at the same time. Yu Qianqiu turned a deaf ear to them and replied indifferently, I just want to warn the two of you. Sometimes killing doesn't require a high cultivation. Don't force me to do it, or you won't even have the chance to regret it. He had long wanted to test the power of the purple flames to see if killing immortals would feel good. But he didn't want to expose it so easily. In fact, he had been holding it in for a long time. Did I hear wrong? Chai Junlang asked Song Lianqing with a teasing expression. Is he threatening us? I think so. Song Lianqing nodded seriously. The two looked at each other, and couldn't help but burst into laughter again. Yu Qianqiu's brows twitched as he flew up and circled twice in the air. Looking around, he realized that there wasn't a single person in the messy square. He snorted coldly in his heart and flew away. How incorrigible. Do you really think you can escape? Chai Junlang, who was floating in the air, put away the fan in his hand. Together with Song Lianqing, he turned into two streams of light and gave chase. On top of a mountain not far away, a ripple-like light curtain appeared out of thin air and flickered. Then it instantly converged into a transparent crystal bead. 5 people suddenly appeared. Wan Lihong grabbed the hovering fantasy immortal bead and turned to Wan Ling, who was beside him. Are you sure neither of them noticed anything amiss? Wan Ling pondered for a moment before replying. Probably not. She then turned to the hunchbacked old man behind her, cupping her hands in greeting. I'll leave this to Grand Elder. Once those two kill Yu Qianqiu, Grand Elder will need to snatch that 50 billion divine grade spirit stones back. The hunchbacked old man in Mu Wan's disguise nodded, watching the four of them turn into streaks of light and chase after Huang Xiaolong. He too turned into a streak of light and flew in another direction. After flying out of the messy square, Yu Qianqiu maintained his highest vigilance, pushing his cultivation to the limit as he sped toward the depths of the vast granite mountain range. Flying into a rocky valley, Huang Xiaolong landed at the center of the valley in a flicker. Your guts aren't small at all. Song Lianqing's cold harumph sounded in the air. Yu Qianqiu raised his head in apprehension. Even though he had a head start, the other party still caught up to him in the blink of an eye. An immortal realm master was indeed an immortal realm master, not someone a mere spirit-severing realm cultivator like him could compare to. Then I really want to see how big his guts are. I'll teach him a lesson first, lest a dead duck refuses to admit defeat. In the air, Chai Junlang folded the folding fan in his hand, shooting out in a streak of light. Almost at the same time he made his move, a white mist burst out from Yu Qianqiu's body. The streak of light pierced through the white mist, and a loud bang resounded in the valley. Crushed rocks flew in all directions, and the valley rumbled endlessly. The streak of light returned to the air, turning back into the folding fan in Chai Junlang's hand. The white mist dissipated, revealing a 10-meter deep pit in the valley below. However, Yu Qianqiu's figure was nowhere to be seen. Both of them blinked for a moment, then released their divine senses at the same time to scan the entire valley. Unfortunately, not a single person could be found. He escaped just like that. Impossible. With his cultivation base at the deity transformation final stage, there was no way he could escape right under his nose. The two of them looked at each other, then quickly separated to search every nook and cranny of the valley again. In the air, Wan Lihong and the others were also scanning the entire valley suspiciously under the effects of the illusionary immortal beads. They also couldn't see how Yu Qianqiu had disappeared. In short, after Chai Junlang attacked once, Yu Qianqiu disappeared for no reason. It was very strange. All of a sudden, their pupils abruptly contracted. From the 10-meter deep pit in the valley, Yu Qianqiu silently rose from the stone pit and slowly floated into the air. Only after his entire body emerged from the pit did Song Lianqing and Chai Junlang, who were searching the valley, discover him. Both of them stared at him in shock, with expressions of disbelief on their faces. Yu Qianqiu floated in the valley expressionlessly. The hem of his robes fluttered despite the lack of wind, and a violent killing intent surged out from his body. His eyes were half open as he swept his gaze over the two of them. He said indifferently, "You actually dared to attack me. Since you're seeking death, don't blame me for being impolite." The two of them were stunned. Song Lianqing then chuckled and said, "I've seen people who don't know life from death, but I've never seen someone who doesn't know life from death. Chai Junlang, keep an eye on him. This brat is a little strange. He can actually hide inside a stone. If we don't teach him a lesson, his foul mouth won't give in." As soon as he finished speaking, he waved his sleeve. An array of light shot out from his storage bracelet, slicing toward Yu Qianqiu's feet at an extremely fast speed. From the looks of it, he didn't want to kill Yu Qianqiu yet. Instead, he wanted to cripple Yu Qianqiu first. Yu Qianqiu's aura had already enveloped an area of several dozen meters. As soon as the ray of light penetrated his aura, his eyebrows twitched slightly. With a boom, the ray of light suddenly exploded into a large cloud of silver powder. This was an extremely bizarre scene. Song Lianqing and Chai Junlang's mouths instantly gaped open, and their eyes were filled with incredulity. The people in the air also looked at one another. Wan Lihong looked at Wan Ling with furrowed brows, and transmitted her voice to her. "Ling, are you sure this Yu Qianqiu is only a soul formation final stage cultivator?" Wan Ling paused and looked at Yu Qianqiu in disbelief. "I shouldn't be wrong. I've checked it myself." "That's strange. The flying sword that Song Lianqing used is at least a level 3 immortal tool. Isn't it a little too terrifying to be able to shatter it into dust without a sound? Song Lianqing muttered with a doubtful expression. Taking advantage of the moment when the two of them were dumbstruck, Yu Qianqiu's aura quickly spread out and locked onto the two of them. Sensing that they were being locked onto, the two of them abruptly came to their senses. They quickly exchanged a glance and disappeared at the same time. Great star-sucking technique. A loud roar sounded from within the valley. Yu Qianqiu's eyes widened in anger. He spread his arms, and his claws tore out two clouds of white mist. At the same time, his figure abruptly retreated and dodged. His claws were like two white ribbons as they retracted into his sleeves. In an instant, the two dried corpses that had been drained of water suddenly appeared. They collided with each other at the place where Yu Qianqiu dodged and fell to the ground at the same time. The two mummified corpses were struggling to get up from the ground. They looked extremely horrifying, but their movements seemed to be a little slow. The two corpses that got up together raised their heads and looked at each other. They seemed to be shocked by each other's appearance and waved their hands to attack each other at the same time. With a bang, the two of them were shaken by each other and took a few steps back. Suddenly, they looked at their outstretched hands at the same time and found that not only were they as thin as firewood, but they were also full of wrinkles. Then, they reached out with both hands and touched their faces and bodies. A series of ho-ho sounds of horror came from their shriveled throats. They seemed to want to speak, but couldn't make a sound normally. The two of them seemed to have scared themselves and retreated in disbelief. Yu Qianqiu looked at the two of them in surprise. He thought, it's really good to have an immortal body. My absorbing star's great technique actually can't kill them. The few people in the air took a deep breath. They were really scared by the strange scene below. Wan Ling couldn't help but cover her mouth with her hands, afraid that she couldn't help but make a sound. I want to see if you two dried corpses have the thick skin of an old monster. Yu Qianqiu's face was ferocious. He waved his sleeves and a 2-meter-long cyan saber appeared in his hand. He floated in the air and said indifferently, "You too, if you have the ability, quickly run away. Otherwise, don't blame my saber for being merciless." The two dried corpses raised their horrifying heads. Their eyes that had shrunk deeply in their eye sockets revealed fear. Without saying a word, they flashed into the air and escaped together. Although they desperately urged their immortal power, the meridians in their body had shrunk a little too much. It was difficult to circulate their true essence like usual. Their flying speed was not much faster than the birds in the sky. Perhaps it was because their bodies were too thin. When they flew up, they immediately drilled out of the loose neckline. Their clothes and shoes all fell to the ground. They saw two disgusting dried corpses flying in the sky. It was really a strange thing in the immortal world. You're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.